Hi everyone, it's Paul Munns here from the Digital Marketing Institute, and I'm delighted to introduce Stephen Marshall from East Tennessee State University. East Tennessee State University are one of our accreditation partners in the US, who we started working with in 2020. We've had some really, really nice success, and we'd like to use today maybe as a bit of an information session, just to let people know how the partnership's been developing, and also find out why did we go into partnership together. And I'm going to bring Stephen in now to maybe introduce himself a little bit more. I'm going to ask him a few questions, and hopefully people will find this information useful, and maybe see if your own academic institution would like to partner and find out more about what we do. Okay, so Stephen, do you want to come in and maybe tell people a bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey, Paul, thanks for having me. Really excited about the partnership we have at Digital Marketing Institute. I think that, my background is really, I'm a department chair of media and communication at East Tennessee State University.
Yep.
I helped ideate the first digital marketing program in the state of Tennessee. That's taught in the College of Business and Technology at my university. And I'm an active consultant working for companies, having worked or working for companies like Siren Marine, Coca-Cola, Adobe, and others. And so I think my perspective might be just a little bit unique in the sense of I kind of straddle the academic and industry space.
Hmm.
I spend many of my days going between teaching a class to leading some kind of department related meeting to being on the phone with a vendor or something for some of the consulting I do. So I recognize very quickly, knowing what's going on in the industry, why certification from Digital Marketing Institute, I feel is an essential thing that not only students in marketing should have, but I think really students that are interested in any kind of entrepreneurialism
Yeah.
should have. I think students that are studying in the liberal arts and studying maybe creative writing, because they are foundational pieces to our media experience, social media and search and email. These are all things that all companies, small, large, use. So if you're somebody who's going to have an independent business and you have a couple employees, or you're self-employed, or you're going to work for major enterprise, these are foundational kinds of things that you really need to know as part of an educational experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And like, in maybe to set the scene for us, like as you said, you are wearing both hats. You've got a lot of experience in the academic world, but you've always stayed connected to industry. Maybe tell us a bit about like what you've observed over the last 5 or 10 years. Has there been an acceleration in terms of what industry want from their university graduates in the US in terms of digital and
Yeah,
technical skills?
that's a great question. I think there's a huge gap there.
Okay.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so the gap between what's happening at the academy and what's happening at the industry is real.
Yeah.
We're as a institution, we're preparing students to be great lifelong learners and global citizens and all those things that we should be doing, critical thinkers, problem solvers, independent thought. I mean,
Yeah.
those are all essential pieces to higher education.
Yeah.
But industry is also looking for folks that have a background in the things that they need applied immediately when they hire somebody.
Yeah.
And that's really where the technology piece is where the gap has been created, and it's been getting wider. It's been getting wider. Hopefully, it's narrowing a bit with organizations like your own.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, at our institution it is. But my colleague, Dr. Melanie Richards, and I, we published a study in 2019 in the Journal of Marketing Development and Competitiveness that was based on basically four pillars of what we think. And both of us are practitioners who are also
Yes.
academics.
Okay.
And through our own consulting, through our own hiring of people outside of the university on teams, we recognize that students need to have best practices and theory. They need to have certifications that industry recognizes as relevant. They need
Yes.
to have partnerships and the ability to connect with industry personnel, and they need to have the experiences in those connections to be able to activate the learning outcomes that they're a part of at the institution. And that's the whole experiential side of things.
Mm.
Because when you're able to take a certification and the experience, you are really bridging success for someone to get hired directly out of a university. Something like the Digital Marketing Institute's associate certification, which is foundational, which is, in my opinion, foundational.
Yeah.
And that's part of our accreditation program and our partnership with DMI. It is something that, from two sides of the coin, you have students who, when they earn that certification, and we just had our very first cohort go through in fall,
Oh,
and
excellent.
we had students, all over LinkedIn and Facebook, sharing that certification. They were so proud of something that they earned while they were earning their university certification or their degree, right?
Yeah.
So it's a value add that comes into the classroom that we're able to provide. My department has really worked with DMI on how do we provide this and how do we build a model of success for this. And then on the other side of it, I have gotten so many different LinkedIn messages because of these certifications that employers are seeing, saying, how can we connect with you so that we can grab some of your talent out of your pipeline? So it's working in both places, right? The students are really excited because they have this certification that they're proud of, that they've worked on. They're not just getting a grade in the class, they're getting the grade and they're getting a certificate that says, hey, I have foundational knowledge of what's happening in digital marketing. And then on the other side of it, the employers are going, how do we get your people?
Yeah, which is always a nice. And you maybe just tell us a bit about like your industry connections. What type of messaging have you got from industry leaders over the last 5 or 6 years? Because I'm sure they look to give you guidance as to what they'd like your graduates to have over when they do come out and into the workplace.
Yeah, it's really those two things I mentioned. It's two of the four things that I mentioned. It's the experiences that are going to lead them to be able to say, you should hire me right away on the aspirin for your headache. And let me show you what I did in class.
Okay.
Case studies are great. I mean, we use case studies. DMI uses case studies. We're all using case studies. But what we try to do is we try to level that up. We have an amazing operation at our university called the Research Corporation. And the Research Corporation has an area, a center of experiential learning and media and marketing that's really focused on giving students real opportunities with real clients. But the certification from DMI is foundational for them to be able to do that work. So they have to have that foundation before they can get to the next level of actually executing. And that DMI certification is a signal, just like all other kinds of signals that we would try to be giving an employer as to why somebody should hire you, not just because of the certification, that the knowledge that the certification brings, but it's also a indication that I can see something through and I can complete it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are all signals to an employer that are important. And that's what the industry folks are looking for. And I guess to book in your question, the things that folks have said to me recently when they've been seeing our students sharing and celebrating their DMI certifications, they comment to me that I'm so glad you're doing this because universities really are not doing this.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a validation of more job ready practical skills. Maybe tell us, just to set the scene and give give some insights. When did you start maybe looking for an industry partner? What was that journey like for you in terms of finding someone suitable?
I would say I'm looking for an industry partner pretty much 24 hours a day.
Okay.
So I just think it's so essential. I think when you've been teaching a while, you realize quickly that I can teach and I can say things in the classroom, the virtual classroom, the real classroom, whatever, right? I can say things, but then somebody from outside that has a different title can come in and say the same exact things. And all my students go, oh, I couldn't believe that they said that, And I'm going, but I said that, And so I think that a lot of the reason that I'm always looking for a partnership in industry is because it brings that validation. DMI brought the biggest validation that I could find, because DMI, when you look at the folks who are basically driving the content that is part of DMI, you're seeing the biggest players in the world in brand and marketing. And you're seeing their spokespeople, they're basically their thought leaders of those organizations that are driving what the content looks like and what it feels like. And then once you get into the content that DMI supplies as being part of an accredited program, it is so freaking good. I mean, it's much better than just going out to YouTube and trying to find things and trying to piece things together. I mean, the content and the readings and the webinars and the case study videos, everything is current, everything is relatable. Students love the fact that they're seeing the brands that they interact with. Now they're getting, like, within the last year or less, of a case study about something that they actually experienced, right? And so they're seeing it from the other side. And so, when we publish things in a textbook, a textbook can take up to a year and a half or 2 years to complete.
Yes.
And so how relevant is that when you're working with somebody like and it can be very relevant. So I'm not disregarding textbooks,
Course,
but I am saying that when you're working with an organization like the Digital Marketing Institute, that content is current all the time. And so the teaching resources that the partnership provided to me were, and as educators, that we're always looking for when we look at a new textbook or we look at some kind of new instructional partnership, we're always going, all right, what kind of stuff are you going to be able to give me for this, to teach my classes? Because a lot of the value is in what kind of content I can bring that I can then curate and deliver to my students. Because again, I think that's an important part of this. It's not like the DMI forces you to adhere to one particular way of delivering this content. You basically work with folks at DMI to figure out, how do we get to the credential level? What do we have to do? How do we assess it? And this is how we want to do it. And DMI is pretty quick to say, we're not going to tell you exactly how you should do it. We just want to be able to look and see it, how you're measuring it, and help you define and make sure that the learning outcomes that you're trying to reach are there.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, that was really good. And I mean, like, even in the early stages, I suppose, we speak to a lot of academic experts around the world, people that have been lecturing in business and marketing for a long time. Maybe explain, how has the content helped you and maybe some fellow lecturers? Like, was there issues before taking the content in that like gaps you were struggling to fill, or how's it helped the content?
I think it just fills any kind of gap. If you're interested in social media advertising, if you're trying to understand SEO and SEM and you want really current examples, email marketing, content strategy, overall digital strategy, it fills every one of those gaps. And I find myself, and we're teaching it both at the undergraduate level and we're teaching it at the graduate level.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So we have plugged it in to courses. It's not an entire program. Paul, I think that's an important piece for me to communicate. It's not an entire program. We've actually identified an undergraduate course that's in our core and a graduate course that's in our core, that we've plugged in the Digital Marketing Institute accreditation pieces into, and the assessment becomes the final exam for that class.
Okay.
And so, that's where I think what I ended up doing is not necessarily filling gaps. Well, there's no gaps to fill from your guys' stuff. What I'm trying to do is just figure out some of the other things that you may not drive real deep into with DMI, which we wouldn't expect you to. That's really where I'm still trying to find the gaps for me.
And what's been the feedback so far from students in general, like, around the content and its delivery and resources? What's the feedback been from students?
It's been fantastic. I was really pretty much ignorant to how much the students would celebrate their certifications.
Okay.
I knew that they would be. I knew they were excited about the opportunity, and and when we brought this in the fall, we had students that were still studying with us that had already taken the classes, and they were like, how can I get that? So we're trying to figure out how we can maybe do a one-off version of that so that every student that's still here can, because it's something that they have been talking about amongst themselves,
Yeah.
and folks that had the class previously but didn't have the opportunity are wanting. But I think the part that I was really just a kind of asleep at the wheel on
Okay.
was how much students would celebrate it, on social media.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was almost like when the day that you all issued those certificates, which are co-branded certificates that have DMI and ETSU on them. I saw them all over LinkedIn and Facebook, and people were tagging me, and I was just like, how could I have not recognized that as I
Uh,
teach this stuff? How could I have not recognized that this is what was going to be the result?
yeah.
But it's another piece of resume. It's another part of our model, which is the applied marketing and media education norm, is what we call it, AMEN,
Yeah.
which that I mentioned to you earlier as a publication. But the certifications, but I would say it's probably we've looked at, we bring in Google, we bring in Salesforce, we bring in different
Yes.
technical certifications. The thing that's so great about the DMI certification is it's not necessarily program specific or
Yeah.
platform specific.
Yeah.
Now there are iterations of, if you're going to do Google ads or you're going to do these kinds
Of
of
course. Yeah.
things, then there are examples and there's case studies and all that stuff is there, and it's very current and it's very accurate. And it's just really great stuff that I didn't have to build thanks to DMI. But the thing is, a lot of these students, they may go big enterprise and they may work on a entire Salesforce, foundational suite of tools, or they may be working at a pool manufacturer and working on a website that's in WordPress and Google Analytics and different things that are just so. Like I said at the beginning, I mean, it could be a very small business, it could be their own business.
Mhm.
Or it could be large enterprise, global,
Yes.
foundational, but DMI really kind of checks all those boxes.
Yes, yeah, no, it's been our experience too with professionals where we would see it as we're trying to teach people best practice, best principles, best skills. So whether you work enterprise or you work with an SME, whether you use Salesforce or use that, you're actually able to make good decisions about what products to use and how to use them. Maybe tell us a little bit, like, what's the experience been like being as a partner? Obviously before we go into partnership, we will make it sound as attractive as possible. But how have you found working with DMI as a partner over the last sort of few months or a year?
Fantastic. I mean, very responsive. The first initiation that I had with DMI was just really to say, how can we make you a part of what we're doing, and what is this accreditation thing, and folks were very responsive, were very quick to allow us to look at the content to see how good it was. It's so reasonable in the sense of the costs, for students, and for however you decide to price it. One of the things I think was super important to us was just not only the validation of the board and the folks that help, and the SMEs that are all part of DMI, and the partners that are industry partners that are part of DMI. But it was also the marriage between DMI and the American Marketing Association.
Okay.
That in itself is a huge validation to say, if the American Marketing Association is going to partner on the pro certification with somebody and it's DMI, I think, you can't get any more of a checkbox on that in terms of, validation.
Yeah.
So accessing materials was super easy. Everybody at DMI is super responsive, super nice like yourself, and very interested in what the mission of the institution is and how they can help drive the mission of the institution. I think one of the things that I think is very important to understand, and the reason that I've done these partnerships with and have an amazing relationship with Adobe, and other companies. But the reason that I bring that is because we have to, as higher education professionals, we and faculty, and institutions, we have to make sure that we're preparing that student for whatever is going to be that next step in their journey. And that student, and many students are coming back, especially in the States, that are coming back as what we traditionally would call as non-traditional students. Now they're very much traditional. They're 25 plus years old and they're trying to reinvent themselves. So if they're coming back, they have a path that they want. They want to be able to come back, get the best practices, the education and the skills they need so they can pivot back into industry and get hired, right? And so it's very important for me to be able to put a program together that makes that happen. And I don't feel like you can do that without industry partners.
Yes, I hear you. And I suppose like are you finding, and this is something we hear from other universities around the world, and in the US or even Europe, you're starting to get more alumni maybe coming back looking for professional training from the university, and obviously with technology, people may want to upgrade themselves every few years. So, is that something maybe new, or was that always happening for East Tennessee State University, where you'd have alumni coming back for short professional training?
I think it's something that all of higher education is seeing as a trend. I think it speaks to the skills gap that we mentioned earlier. I think folks that are out in the field right now, they may not feel like they have the capacity to do the work. I mean, if I'm going to cite a stat from DMI, I think it was from 2017. Only 8% of current digital marketers have entry level skills. I
Yeah,
may just butchered that, but I think it's pretty close.
yeah,
And so and when you think about that, that means 92% of the people that are doing the job right now don't have entry level skills.
mm,
That's pretty scary. And I think from a business perspective, that's scary. But I also think from somebody who's in that space and is feeling inadequate because they're one of the 92%, they want to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to not only be a champion for their company, but to make sure they're putting food on the table and living their best life.
and just maybe thanks for your time today, Stephen. We might just finish off on one question. Has the DMI partnership helped with student recruitment, or is it too early to say?
No, I really do think it has. I think the amplification that I had mentioned earlier I mean, we have a graduate and undergraduate program. And so
Yeah,
oftentimes folks will want to come back to reinvent themselves. They already have a bachelor's, right? So they're trying to figure out a grad school. And they want to be able to do something that's going to add value, not this just the degree they get from the university, but also the certifications that we can bake into, I like to say bake into at
mhm,
their journey, right?
yeah,
And I think so. The amplification that our students are doing has really increased some of the inquiries that we've gotten about our program, not only from, and I mentioned, but not only from students that aren't here, but also from industry folks who may want to put their people in our program.
oh, very good.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
lots of different companies have education funding opportunities,
yes,
continuing education funding opportunities, and so we've gotten those kinds of things. I think the other uptick that we've gotten from this is really from the high school level
okay, yeah,
and getting on the radar. Different. This is a differentiator.
yes, yeah,
For a university, it's a huge differentiator for us being the first in the United States to
yeah,
have this associate certification.
yeah,
And those are the kinds of things that I'm always looking at as a marketer. I'm trying to understand what's our value proposition and why are we unique.
yeah,
What's different about what we can do, and that's what really led me to DMI to begin with. And then once I started kicking the tires, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a no brainer for us, really. So students that are coming to the university and they want to do something in the business space, many students in high school don't know what they want to do,
yeah,
but they do know media and they
mm,
do know great experiences,
mm,
and a lot of times that's how I'll explain it to them. And because they may not compare the experiences from one university to another, but they are comparing the experiences they're having at a university to the very best experiences they're having in their life. And when I do corporate training for digital experience, which I do, that's a big takeaway and a big thing that we talk about for a good amount of time, is that customers are not just looking at the experiences that they're having at your institution in a silo. They're looking, or your business, they're looking at what are the very best experiences I'm having, and I know the ones that suck and the ones that don't, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that this certification is something that is again, it's a signal to somebody to say, wow, if I go to this particular school, I'm going to get a degree, but I'm also going to get this unique certification that I can't get at any other institution, you know, yet. I mean, I think if institutions are smart, they all will adopt this.
Yeah. Okay, great. No, thanks. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. So thanks very much for your time. Thanks, Stephen.